So Deepblocks, we started because the industry of new development, new construction was very fragmented. Many disciplines have to come together. These disciplines have different backgrounds in education, different processes, different tools. And we thought that by bringing all of that information together, all the logic, all the data, we can compress the development analysis process to basically no time.
Hi, I'm Adam Gower, founder of GowerCrowd.com, where we help real estate syndicators find more investors. Welcome to the Easy Win AI Real Estate Show, exploring AI's impact on the real estate industry. Each episode offers practical tools, competitive AI strategies, and expert insights. For essential news and updates, visit easywin.ai and sign up for our free newsletter with actionable how-tos like how I added hours to my day by creating this clone of me you're watching and listening to right now. easywin.ai, the only newsletter you need on real estate and AI. All right, now back to the real me. Now then, pause for one moment. If you have ever had to deal with zoning regulations and figuring out what can actually be done on any particular asset that you've taken a look at, you know that it is total brain damage. Well, check this out. My guest today, Olivia Ramos, who is founder and CEO of Deepblocks, has simplified that to the nth degree. One of the things that she said during my call, of course, I record these intros after I speak to my guests, you got to listen to, that is absolutely the truth, right? It's my experience as well. It's totally hers. She's the first person I've heard that actually said it. Months and months of work can be done in seconds. Oh my goodness me. That is what you're going to be hearing from Olivia Ramos today. If you have not yet signed up to the easywin.ai newsletter, please go ahead and do that. And you will get updates, weekly updates, or as often as we push them out, what's going on in the real estate industry as it applies to AI, or how AI is being used, as well as, most importantly, easy wins, how-tos and guides to really leveraging this incredible technology for your own daily purposes and to help you improve your productivity and be more successful. What else can I tell you? All there at easywin.ai. Okay, let's get on with it. Olivia Ramos, founder and CEO of Deepblocks. Here she is. Amazing story. Olivia, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a real pleasure. I've been looking forward to talking to you. Let's start right at the very top. Deepblocks. What is Deepblocks? What was the problem you were trying to solve when you founded the company?
Well, first, thank you for having me. Adam, it's great to meet you. And so Deepblocks, we started because the industry of new development, new construction was very fragmented. Many disciplines have to come together. These disciplines have different backgrounds in education, different processes, different tools. And we thought that by bringing all of that information together, all the logic, all the data, we can compress the development analysis process to basically no time. So that was the initial intention.
So the development process, what is that? Describe that to me as through the lens of Deepblocks. What does that mean exactly?
Yes, so Deepblocks is tackling this process in order. So the very first thing is understanding a city, what's going on in the city, what's available for building in the city, what are the trends of that city, to understand demand, to understand growth and timing. And for that, you need something, you need zoning data, right? Zoning data has the data points of the future. It understands what the city is looking to build and where. And so the first step was to digitize that data into each property to really get a feel for what's existing and what the potential is. So that's the very first layer. And so we bring all that data together to understand, what the future potential of a city is. And the first step is to then determine which sites are the ones that have the best potential for investments. Let me know if that makes sense so
It
far.
certainly does, yes. So once I've identified a city, that's how you can help me based on what you just described. But can Deepblocks help me identify what cities have the best opportunities for development? Or is this typically focused on local developers?
No, no, no. So we're a national operation, and depending on the data, we'll have data in different l- scales of boundaries. So, for example, one of our projects is looking at market data, and it has data for every zip code, every census tract, every neighborhood, every city, every county in the country. And that's where we determine where population is changing, where the different types of people are moving around, where's influx of population and things like that, but also housing prices, rents, crime. We look at that over time, whatever timeline is available. And then for 250 cities, we digitize zoning. So we're able to look at, a couple hundred cities at once to understand based on these I guess these legal documents essentially of what's possible to be built, how has that affected the growth of income, the growth of population, the growth of different variables that could be signals for investment. So we look at it at the national scale, but we're able to narrow down to very specific properties, and we have that level of resolution.
That's really incredible. So let's get into the details a little bit. But who is your uh, so first of all, what do you call them? You call them customers, clients, users, whatever term you say. Who, who,
Yeah.
who is your user avatar? Like, so who are you targeting specifically?
So we generally up to this point work with larger regional and national developers, large funds that have an appetite for scale. Because the local developer usually really understands their ordinance, they work with local players, they have their brokers and architects that do a lot of this work for them.
Mm.
But at the national scale, if you're trying to expand to 50 different MSAs, you don't have local teams in every single city and every single one of these MSAs. So that's where Deepblocks comes in at a very broad level where you can be as high level or as property specific as you like. But usually big operations are our major target right now.
And so, how does somebody interact with Deepblocks? Like, what is the user experience exactly? I mean, I have a specific question I'd like to wonder if you can answer
Yes.
on Deepblocks, but how does somebody interact with the platform?
So we have multiple products, but our kind of legacy product
Mm.
is you have a map, and that map has all the parcels in a city, and you're able to query across those parcels. For example, show me every parcel where I could build 200 units, and there's currently less than 10,000 square feet. So all of a sudden, out of tens of thousands of parcels, you're able to identify where this development capacity sits. And then you can select these parcels, get a breakdown of what's on it, what zoning allows, and then also a series of layers, about 50 layers to understand demographics, different shifts over time, sea level rise, incentives by the governments, all kinds of different information. And then once you select a parcel or an assemblage of those parcels, you're able to produce a 3D model that's combined with a financial model. And so very quickly, you can get a feel for the feasibility of those parcels.
Wow, that's really incredible. So you say financial model. What's actually involved in that? Because it's not an easy thing to budget, especially large scale developments, of course.
Yes, so the financial model is a very simple back of the envelope calculation. It's what they say in the Masters of Real Estate. If it doesn't fit in the back of the envelope, it's too complicated of a
Right.
project. So it follows that, and
Okay.
it includes all the major assumptions: your income, your expenses, your cost, your vacancies. And it takes a 1 year snapshot of these things and gives you a return on cost calculation. And that's usually a very honest way to compare many different projects, because you're not making assumptions on growth over time, which would be an internal rate of return. You're focused on just a return on cost calculation and seeing which site gives you the best return.
Fascinating. So if I'm a major company and I'm looking at 50 MSAs, how do I use Deepblocks to filter down to opportunities that are highest priority for me?
So two ways. One, you have an analyst working, full time on the Deepblocks software, looking at these different markets, or we generate custom algorithms across these markets looking for very specific things. So we've normalized this data so that we can query across it based on, let's say, buildable area, existing building, units allowed. So we're able to also work with very large funds that want to do like a very broad query and give them the results for those.
And so as a user, I would input my primary criteria, and then Deepblocks will help filter across all the MSAs to find targets that fit my criteria. Is that how it works?
So for the software itself, the SaaS product, you would work on one city at a time and query that city.
Okay.
If you need a much larger operation, we generate a custom algorithm and give you the results. So we also work on more customized projects that are very large scale.
Okay, so that's more like a consulting basis. You will help large
Yes, either
organizations.
that, or if there's a robust data science team or GIS team within that firm, we could also provide data so that data is integrated with internal data sets. There are multiple ways to do it.
Okay, so you're basically consolidating all the kind of information that developers typically have to gather from multiple sources into one place. That's what Deepblocks does.
Yes, that is the software, right? So, but the reason we're bringing all this data together is because we're training large language models to see if we can find connections that you wouldn't find just like looking at this data, even overlapping this data, so that we can, generate new ways or new investment thesis. I'll give you an example.
I was just going to say,
Yes,
yeah.
I'll give you an example. Through some of this research and seeing what we can get from a model, we found that there were really interesting anomalies when there was a zoning, when there was this rezoning, so a zoning change. And an algorithm that came out of that was, if we look at a 1 mile radius and the percentages of multifamily, let's say, for example, were less than 1%, it signals for a zoning change. And if we looked at several of these, and indeed there were zoning changes, and therefore every other parcel that had the original zone had precedence for also changing the zoning. So then we can begin to predict a change in the city and a total outcome of population increase, commercial increase, housing stock increase that you wouldn't be able to see for another 5 to 10 years. And at that point, that would be a really interesting investment thesis.
Yeah, that is extremely interesting and also extremely difficult to do. So what have been the challenges that you've faced building the platform itself? Because we've been playing with some stuff, not anywhere near as sophisticated or as advanced as you, but I know that it's very difficult to do. So what have been the biggest challenges along the way? Even like from when you started, even.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, we thought that we could purchase standardized zoning data. And that was like a harsh reality. We knew this data was extremely important. It was really nowhere to be found at the time. So the challenge has been how to streamline and update regularly zoning data and zoning changes. But more than that, we're one of the few, if not the only company that has this at scale at the parcel level. So the zoning yield, not just the rules, but how those rules apply to each specific parcel. And that has been a very large, like 80% of our team is focused on this work. And now we have more data about this, more training data than ChatGPT had to train that model. So now we're training a model for just understanding zoning and potentially can extract this information on its own. And that would be wonderful if we can get to that point.
Well, hang on. So wait. What's that? Connect the dots there. What is it? What's that leap that you're looking to do? I didn't quite follow exactly.
Yes, so now we have enough data to train, and let's say an adaptive model, a model that would be very knowledgeable about zoning based on these 250 cities, but based on each parcel and each yield of each of these cities.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is this model would serve as one, you could have a lot of conversations about what's new, what are the consequences, feeding new data sets so that we understand what has changed. But also on top of this model, we can build a network of models, and we're at the first layer on top of this model, where it begins to identify the data that we need from zoning ordinances on a consistent basis. So then all we have to do is feed the new ordinance, and we'd have a new set of updates for that city. And so once we could do that, we essentially, and we have all the layers of all the different zoning points that we need, then we can essentially train it to gather new cities. So instead of 250, we could have, 3,500, all 20,000 cities that have independent zoning ordinances. And that would be an amazing contribution to investment.
Oh gosh, I mean, I've been through zoning multiple times. It is brain damage, particularly, I don't know about the rest of the country, but California, I mean, the layers of complexity to zoning and everything that's involved. I did one deal where we had to get our planning approved. 13 different departments had to sign off on it. It was just mind-blowing, really.
Yes.
So how are people actually using it? Like what can you give some specific examples of how, without being, indiscreet about users or clients, etc. But how are people
Yeah.
actually benefiting?
Yeah, so for example, let's say something really popular in San Diego. There are a lot of ADUs now. Everybody wants to figure out which properties are best for ADUs. So a very
Mm,
simple search is let's look at lots that are a certain size. The structure is a small structure, perhaps an older structure, and there's plenty of space in the lot itself for an ADU. So now we can look at a couple of thousand, maybe like 6 or 7,000 at once, and narrow down to the 20 or 30 where this would be ideal. So in a way, it generates what we're calling a seller lead, right? Which hasn't existed yet.
mm,
And so we recently signed a partnership with Christie's International Real Estate to to test these seller leads across their agents and see if there's, how quickly that can generate new business. So that's one example. Another example in LA, I mean, I'm sticking to California just because you mentioned California,
sure.
are buildings that are, maybe like 1,500 to 2,500 square feet, but that allow 6 to 7 units, maybe up to 10 units, which is great for small developers that are looking to scale sort of this size of building. And out of a couple of thousand, again, we reduced it to like 60, 70 sites. And I mean, we could do that over and over again and all day. And so the job would be, let's go there. Let's see if that owner is interested, that essentially a single family owner is
Mhm.
interested of selling it because a developer might develop something interesting there. So then it becomes really a much easier conversation on scoping and canvassing and finding these opportunities.
All right, so that's absolutely fascinating. So the way that you would do it before is you would find a property and then you would figure out what the zoning is on top of it and try and figure out if it's something that you want to do. And you'd have to do that typically one property at a time. But you're overlaying all this data and then pulling out of that specific target locations. Are you the first person to do that? I mean, it just sounds incredible to me.
I think we're one of the first, and there are other companies that are doing similar things at different scales.
Mm.
But I think in terms of the zoning yield, the level of accuracy, and the level of resolution, we're probably in the top two, top three.
But now here's the thing though. The first thing you told me is your avatar is an institutional investor, and yet you give the example of ADUs or kind of medium small scale developers who might want to build 6 units on a single family lot, for example. So how do you accommodate them in your pricing structure, for example? Is it accessible to them, or are you only really focused on institutional developers?
No, our institutional developers are really interesting because we get to design new algorithms. We get to discover new ways of looking at this data. And so we work really closely and in a very exciting way with them. But we do have we have small developers, we have commercial brokers that are using the software for canvassing purposes. So we charge $280 per month per city. So for a local person, that would if a single feasibility analysis would cost, from 500 to who knows, maybe $5,000, depending on the size of the property and the complexity of the potential project. So 280 a month to do unlimited search and unlimited modeling, it's very reasonable.
Yes, I mean, the cost of actually modeling, just the very fact that you're able to filter down to identify target locations, presumably very quickly, is, I mean, that could take days and weeks for somebody to do.
Yes.
So, how easy is the platform? Sorry, I haven't used it. My bad.
We'll send you a playground so
Well,
you
you've
can
got me,
check it
yeah,
out.
you've got me
Yeah,
all
yeah.
excited about the prospect where I live. It's like, all right, cool. That sounds really good.
Yeah.
So how have you worked on the user experience, right? So you've talked about institutional investors. They've got huge tech teams and people who are really, sophisticated users, so they can figure out new SaaS platforms and weave their way through it. But your average developer, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, can barely use their phone, let alone drill down on sophisticated SaaS technology like you have. So how have you addressed the user experience then, particularly for, the smaller developer, the
Yes.
280 a month person?
So we are on our fifth iteration of the interface because of all the things we've learned. And so I'll give you an example. Our first round of funding, 80% were real estate developers, our real estate developers. So they helped us a lot in the way we designed it, from just like a concept and an idea down to, the implementation of the interface. And so, like I said, we've done 5 different interface iterations because we've learned a lot in watching and in getting feedback from developers. So it's really, really intuitive at this point. You have all your input parameters in one side, all your assumptions for like unit mix, uses, stepbacks, and it's all sliders. So it's all very easy to do sensitivity analysis. And then on the right side, you have your outputs. So your back of the envelope, return on costs, your assumptions. So we've done it in a way that has become a single meeting. Like we usually do just one onboarding meeting. That's all it takes for the developer to get ongoing. And most of the time, it's not the developer who's using it, but an analyst under the developer, or someone under in the team.
What about architects? I mean, it seems like it's a secret weapon for architects to say to a prospective client or even to an existing developer client, hey, not only can we design these things for you, but hey, guess what? We can identify exactly where they are as well.
So I have a master's in architecture and a master's in real estate development. And the goal, I mean, I always wanted the architect to take on financial analysis. And I even taught financial analysis to graduate level design studios. It was a huge passion. I feel like the market is not there yet, but it is growing. The architect who wants to be a developer, who wants to speak to the developer in a kind of eye to eye, apples to apples way, needs to understand financial analysis and needs to understand the investment side of things. And I feel like this could be a tool for that architect. But for now, it's hard to find architects that want to be in that conversation. Excuse me, because there's a lot of risk in that conversation. There are a lot of assumptions in that conversation. So, but I'm hopeful that could change. I
Let me
am.
jump. Sorry, let me just jump back. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you'd
No.
wrap. So let me jump back to something you said that's extremely interesting. So not that everything you've said isn't extremely interesting, but one thing in particular stands out, and that is you mentioned that your first round of funding was developers. So how have you funded the development of Deepblocks? Are you VC backed? Are you cash flow backed? Like how have you structured that?
So we've raised a little over 5 million from VCs and angels. All of
Mm,
the angels are real estate developers, and most of the VCs have LPs that are in real estate development. So it's been a very development focused group of investors, and we're very proud of that, and they've really helped us along the way. And we're not yet at break-even point, but we are um, very close actually. So it's a little bit of both. Certainly up to this point has been investor ran in terms of our our cash flow.
So what are the challenges that you face marketing as you build the company? Like how are you marketing Deepblocks? See, obviously you have a very broad range of target users. So how do you address marketing? What are the challenges you have to get
Yeah,
there?
I'll be honest. As a young founder, when we started, I didn't think about marketing. It was something that we've had to get to know along the way.
Mm,
One of the things we learned was that most of our customers are on LinkedIn. So we have a big presence on LinkedIn,
mhm.
and it brings a lot of most of our customers have come from there. So we feel like the last couple of months, 6 to 8 months, we realized that maybe we've reached a kind of limit on LinkedIn and wanted to kind of broaden the scope in a more like a search-based, SEO based operation. And
Okay.
so we've expanded a pretty large content, AI-based content operation to have really insightful information across every single geography in the country, and seeing if that could be useful to small developers, small buyers, small investors, but also large funds. And that has started to bring additional business as well. So kind of really understanding all the different dimensions of marketing and especially organic marketing, which is the preferred way of our preferred way of operating.
Yeah, SEO is has a long tail and is very difficult to conquer.
Yes.
Well, so off topic slightly, off the Deep Blocks product itself briefly. To what extent are you integrating AI into your marketing efforts?
Well, mm, marketing are marketing efforts, not products.
Marketing, yeah.
Marketing. Yes. Well, like we mentioned, we're creating articles and news using AI.
Mm,
So we're generating all these really interesting data sets and training AI to speak about them, and generating kind of an article-like product that will, and for example, in 2 months, we've been able to generate almost 100,000 articles, which is just
good
to give
grief.
you a data point. Um, we have a blog also, which is separate
Mm,
from our articles, and it took me 6 years to write 400 blogs. Okay, and we're almost reaching 100,000. We're at like 97,000 articles in less than 2 months. I think this is a really interesting use for AI,
mm.
and especially for a company like ours that has about 50 different data sets across the country. And it also helps us generate that content, also helps us train new models that will understand the market differently. So it's marketing, but it's also part of like a really interesting process for more intelligent models and more insightful products as well.
So what are you finding people are reacting to the most positive? Like at the top of that 100, like mind-blowing, 100,000 articles, but of the ones that are generating the most interest, what are people responding to
Well,
the most, do you think?
I'll tell you, this is the first time I actually talk about this project,
Mhm.
and we are the first subject of those projects is just now starting to get some
Right.
traction.
Yeah.
But we have, for example, the one that's coming out next week, which will take a little bit of time for it to get to actual views, is for every single neighborhood, zip code, city. We have a very detailed list of crimes, property crimes, and violent crimes, housing prices, and how these things come together. So we think
Ah.
we're bringing up like a lot of different types of subjects and then combining these subjects for new types of insights. And so we need a little bit of time to understand what the market is reacting to the most. But yeah, we're very hopeful that they'll be very useful information.
Very interesting. So, okay, so you are leveraging the intelligence that Deepblocks is putting out that would normally be user generated, generating it yourself and then pushing that out as content to draw people in to do deeper research and to use the
Yes,
platform.
but to also train models to understand the market better and make new relationships better.
It sounds absolutely fascinating and very, very sophisticated approach. I have a million words of content on my website. It took me 10 years to get there. So the idea of 100,000 articles just blows my mind. So what about kind of getting back to Deepblocks now? So you've talked about ground up development, which
Yes.
is, an animal of its own, of course, in the industry. What about value add? People that want to add value to apartment buildings or seeking adaptive reuse opportunities, for example. How do you
Yes.
cater to that audience?
So the one of our favorite search is for that. There's two that I'll mention. One,
Hmm.
for example, in Brooklyn, we were looking at properties that allow, let's say, 20 units. That's their maximum, but currently have more than 20 units, which means the current building is grandfathered into higher yields than the zoning allows, which is typical when there's older buildings. So finding those are, they're like gems because then you know that those are only renovation projects. You do not want to demolish something that already surpassed the zoning. So that's a very simple
Hmm.
search for us. Another one is, which we find fascinating, and we hope that the market figures out a way to do this in a profitable way, is conversion from office to multifamily. So through zoning,
Hmm.
we're able to say this building has a matching square footage to the same requirement for the units allowed, right? So if it allows way more units than the actual office, then it's better instead of spending the money to demolish it and build something new. And if it's the units allowed is much smaller, then it doesn't make sense to remodel it for like 10%, 20% space. But if it's an exact match, those are amazing gems of office buildings that would, optimize your zoning allowance for units. And we found in kind of Midtown Manhattan, out of 2,000 properties that had office buildings, there's about 150 that have that exact match. And so those are great projects to start with.
Yeah, that office to residential conversion is very, very complicated. Even if you find something that the zoning allows for, there are, of course, a huge list of criteria that have to, check boxed before you can
Yes.
actually do that. So do you help your users in figuring out, okay, this one is zoned just right, but it's also its floor plan or its floor plate is the right shape and the right structure. It's are you able to dive into some of the more
A little
difficult
bit, yeah.
criteria?
So the 3D model aspect of our software, you can look at one floor plate at a time and see what can fit in there and kind of sketch out what that, that floor plan would look like. And I know that the office, the there are certain office floor plates that are not conducive to multifamily, but I think it's a matter of like ingenuity and innovation in solving that problem. But yeah, the software allows those types of studies, a very preliminary floor plan studies for whether it's an existing structure or a potential building.
So tell me about this. It's fascinating, this idea that you create visual representations of what you're predicting. Describe that to me.
You mean in the 3D model?
Yes. How does that work
Oh,
exactly? Well, it's, we've got to listen. There's somebody who's listening, can't hear. Sorry, can't see what we're talking, even if you did a screen share. Unless you want to do a screen share, we certainly could. But certainly describe it anyway. What does that
yeah.
look
I
like?
mean, there are a lot of companies that do kind of generative 3D modeling.
Hmm.
It's not too different than that. In fact, it's a very, very simple model. What's interesting about it is that you can change any type of use. So let's say it's industrial or office or hotel or multifamily or condominium. And every time you change that use, you have all of the assumptions for that use. So then you can adjust the unit sizes. And so as you adjust these assumptions, the 3D model changes in real time. The financials change in real time, and a PDF presentation is changing in real time. So that if somebody like a developer, let's say you have a developer client says, or your boss is a developer, and he's like, let's, or she's like, let's change it to like much smaller units and see what our return is, then you change it very quickly, adjust a few sliders, and boom, send them the new PDF. So the idea is to make this process. Otherwise, you're like in CAD or Revit or SketchUp, and then transferring those numbers to Excel, and then changing a PowerPoint or something. And there's a lot of human error. When all of it is integrated, everything is cohesive, and you can count on the result.
Wow, that's really interesting. Olivia, we should do 'cause we should set a time to do a demo.
Yeah,
I'd love to
absolutely.
push a demo out. So I mean, it would be great to actually see it in action. Now let's actually, and with that in mind, so obviously people have seen it in action and like it a lot. I did read the Christie's announcement from a couple of months ago, and that was in New York City, if I'm correct. What I read was that you offered somehow they bought an exclusivity to a certain area. Tell me, it was like an exclusive. It sounds similar to the financial model that Zillow has, that you can buy placement. When you land on the Zillow website, you can buy, as brokers or agents can buy placements so that they show up and they're the ones that selected. How does it work? How does your exclusivity work, and what are the advantages, and how does that work from a client perspective?
Yeah, so they have exclusive rights to the tri-state area. So there's a list of cities that they want to focus on, and those are the exclusive ones in Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. And what we do is we generate seller leads based on zoning. So we identify and categorize all the properties that are underutilized so that their agents that are local in those neighborhoods and in those cities are able to speak with those owners, and they already have developers ready to purchase those properties. So the idea is a single lead, a single seller lead would generate not just that transaction because they have the developer and they make the connection with that seller, because I would say 90% of those properties identified are not in the market. And then they have that relationship with the developer so that they also represent the project after it's been built. So that's a single lead, which is, as opposed to a buyer lead, which is a single transaction, a seller lead can generate a lot more business over time. So this is the first time this is being done, and we're very grateful that Christie's has kind of bet on us to make this happen, and we're putting this now, we're putting this to action.
So the organization, in this case, the company, Christie's, is acquiring this data from Deepblocks and then pushing it out to making it available to their agents to do research. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so it's Christie's International Real Estate because
Hmm.
Christie's alone, it's a huge umbrella of all kinds of really interesting business.
Hmm.
So Christie's International Real Estate New York, yes, there what we're doing is we're narrowing down the 5% of properties that would be very good seller leads. And they, for developers, right?
Hmm.
Specifically for new construction. And so they are, exactly, they're getting this group of agents that focus on new construction to now hyper focus on these properties and get the seller to lock in the seller and then bring it to the developer.
It's extraordinary. I mean, it gives your client an extraordinary competitive edge, I would imagine, in the market. Have you had any feedback yet? I know that it's like brand new. It's still, the ink is still wet, so they say, but
It is brand new, but the agents are very excited. The managers are very excited. We are
hmm.
continuing to refine this process, and we're very hopeful that we'll see the first transaction very soon.
And you can also presumably somebody could buy exclusive rights to those same states, but for different criteria, right? Somebody who's looking for different model, like value add, for example. I mean, I'm picking that out of my ear, but
Well, we would run it by Christie's because I mean we we have we want them to optimize their business in those three states. So if they would want to take that on, we'll probably reserve it for them. But
uh,
yeah, we're open to all kinds of conversations.
Olivia, I can't believe it. I just accidentally nudged my clock and realized how far we've gone, how much time we've spent already. God, I could go on for hours, but I'm not going to. I tell you what, I really would like to arrange, if you're okay with it, I'd love to arrange a recorded demo to guide somebody through. Let's do that. I'll put that up
Yes.
as well. It'd be really cool. And we've been hyper active on LinkedIn as well. It's the only place to be, really. So we'll do a little work to get that out on LinkedIn as well. We're doing quite well. I have to have a look at you. Also doing very well as well. Actually, I do follow you. But let me wrap up, if you don't mind, reluctantly, with three rapid fire questions, if I might, that I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
All right. So the first one, why should real estate professionals and investors, so anyone in real estate, be paying attention to AI today?
Yes. AI is already turning months and months of work into seconds. So if they're looking for hyper efficiency and hyper scale, AI is the only way.
Isn't that incredible? I'm almost reluctant to say that. That it take what seriously. I have a hard time actually articulating that, but it is totally true.
It
What could
is.
take weeks and months to do can be done in seconds. It really is the truth of what's going on. It's like mind blowing. All right, so Olivia, how do you personally use AI daily? What's your go-to? How do you use it?
I use multiple models, constantly seeing which models have the most amount of hallucinations, really testing them. We're now using them to generate content. We have a product that has an internal model that analyzes market data. So, I mean, we're all AI all day.
Are there any platforms in particular that you personally use just for your workflows during the day?
Personally, I go back and forth between OpenAI and Anthropic.
Hmm.
Yes,
Okay.
but we also use Llama internally.
Okay, last question. So this show is called the Easy Win Real Estate Show. And the idea is that if you listen to the show and as soon as it's over, you can go and try something and just blow your mind like, oh my goodness, I never knew you could do that so easy. What would you suggest? Any easy wins that you can suggest somebody tries as soon as they finish listening today?
Well, selfishly, but also really true, they can get in touch and we'll walk them through their city and show them how quickly it is to find whatever they're looking for in real estate development.
Okay, I'm going to do that immediately after. Gotta figure
Seconds,
that out.
in seconds, yes.
Oh gosh, it's really incredible. Olivia Ramos, founder and CEO of Deepblocks. What an enormous pleasure meeting. Thanks so much for joining me.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right, that was Olivia Ramos, who is founder and CEO of Deepblocks. Isn't that incredible? I mean, the idea that you can simplify zoning to such an extraordinary level is, to me, somebody who's been through zoning so many times. Oh my goodness, it's such hard work. To be able to simplify it in the way that Deepblocks does is amazing. What an incredible use of AI to deliver out of control benefits to anybody that ever has anything to do with zoning and building in any city in America. Olivia, what a pleasure meeting you. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I'm looking forward very much to doing those case studies. We'll punch those out as soon as we get them recorded. That's going to be very interesting. Dear viewers, be sure to keep an eye on that. We're going to do some breakdowns of how to use Deepblocks to find incredible development opportunities right in your neighborhood. All right, so stay tuned there at easywin.ai. In fact, sign up for the newsletter. If you've not done that already, you'll be amongst the first to hear how to find opportunities as a result of using Deepblocks once I finish these case studies with Olivia. And thank you, everybody, for having joined us today. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting these things together and discovering amazing people like our guest today, Olivia Ramos. But that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much. Until next time, this is Adam Gower signing off.